Lego investing has become more and more popular over recent years, with plenty of articles and videos out there telling you just how much money you can make. But with more and more people jumping on the bandwagon, is there still money to be made from buying and selling Lego sets? Well, in this video, I answer that question. I tell you about my Lego investing journey, how much money I made, the lessons I learned, and what I think the future of Lego investing looks like. So I bought my first Lego investment set in 2020. It was set 75208, Yoda's Hut. And then over the next few years, I bought and sold well over 100 Lego sets. Initially, I didn't really know much about it, but in early 2021, I got involved in a website called Brick Ranker, which I was running with my brother. And it's a website that tracks the value of Lego sets and minifigures, and it contains news, reviews, and feature articles. So as you can imagine, through that I learned a lot about Lego and Lego investing, and I began to see where money could be made. With Lego investing, there are two main strategies. Number one is buying sets currently stocked by Lego, and number two is buying sets that are retired. So these are sets that Lego no longer produces. I went with the first strategy, which is I think what a lot of people do. And around 80% of the sets I bought were non-retired sets. And of these, I got them at a discount from the recommended retail price of around 30%. There were some I did pay the full retail price for. These were Bricklink designer program sets, which you can't really get at a discount. And the other reason I paid full price for sets was just due to bad planning. There were sets that I thought would go up in value after they retired, but I just left it way too late to buy them. And by that point, there were no discounts available, so I had to pay full whack. There were 17 sets I bought that were retired. These included many old Star Wars sets, and there was one retired Hobbit set and one retired Ninjago set that I bought. I also got 6 GWPs. These are gifts with purchase. These are sets that Lego gives away for free when you spend a certain amount of money or you buy a certain set from either a Lego store or Lego's online store. This graph shows the amount of each set type that I bought. So I bought sets from a good range of themes. The majority were Star Wars, followed by Harry Potter, Icons, and then Bricklink. Now in terms of where I bought my sets, I bought most of them from Amazon because they do good discounts, especially around promotional events like Prime weekends. The other main place I got sets were the established Lego retailers in the UK. So that's obviously Lego itself, John Lewis, Argos and Smiths, and they also do pretty good discounts usually. I bought a few sets from eBay but not many, and I actually bought a few sets from someone I met through eBay, a nice chap who I did a couple of deals with in the car park of Peterborough Services. Now in terms of where I sold my sets, I sold a couple to my brother, but the rest I sold on eBay. Now eBay do have quite a high commission, I think it's around 12 to 13%. But I made sure that I listed all my sets during promotional events, which actually took place every 2 weeks, so they're quite frequent, and they offered an 80% discount on the regular commission, which lowered the commission to around 2 to 3%. Now the other main place you can sell Lego sets is Bricklink, but after doing a bit of research I found that most Lego sets actually sold for more on eBay than they did on Bricklink, so I went with the eBay option. Now on to the results. So I sold 114 Lego sets and I made money on 111 of those. So I only lost money on 3 sets. And ironically, that first set I bought, Yoda's Hut, is actually the one I lost the most money on. So it just goes to show with any investment, definitely do research first before you dive into it. So now on to the 5 sets that I made the most money on. In 5th was the Retro Bowling Alley, which is a Bricklink designer program set. I sold that for £185 profit. In 4th place was the modular construction site, which I sold for £234 profit. In 3rd place, another Bricklink designer program set, the Cast in the Forest. I sold that for £267 profit. In 2nd place was, you guessed it, another Bricklink designer program set, the modular Lego store, which I sold for £267 and 1p profit. And then the set I made the most money on was set 75159, the Death Star, and I made a whopping £409 profit on that one. I should say that those figures are before commission and before the costs of postage and packaging, but still some really good returns there. Now in terms of percentage profit, the 5 sets I made the most on were in 5th place, set 75283, the AAT. As a Star Wars set, I made 157% profit on that. In 4th place was Forks, the Harry Potter set. I sold that for 167% profit. That was a bit of a surprise, that one. I really wasn't expecting that to go up so much in value. In 3rd place was a retired Star Wars set I bought, the Genoese Starfighter. I sold that for 171% profit. Then in joint 1st place are 2 of the Bricklink designer program sets I've already mentioned. That's the Cast in the Forest and the modular Lego store. I sold both of those for just over 200% profit. Now, as you can tell from those results, the Bricklink designer sets were by far the most successful for me. And that's because the first few rounds especially were very limited. They were limited to around 10,000 copies and they sold out really, really quickly. And most people missed that opportunity and then they were willing to pay a premium later on. Speed Champions was a theme that also did very well for me, followed by Harry Potter. And that was actually quite surprising because Harry Potter tends to have a younger audience. And in general, you want to be buying sets aimed at adults because they're the ones that have the most disposable income. But in general, I did pretty well across the board. City sets made me the least money, but I kind of expected that. I think I just bought a few because they were really good discounts and I thought I can't really fail to make money on these. But now, the moment you've all been waiting for. How much money did I make in total? Well, I made £4,707, but that was before commission and the costs of posting and packaging. When I take those two things away, the total was £3,574, which is still a very good amount. That equates to around £30 profit per set. But how much work did I actually need to do to make that money? Well, at the time I didn't track how much time I was spending on buying the sets, storing them, packaging them up and then dropping them off at my local dispatch centre. But if we say, as an estimate, it took me around 30 minutes per set, it might have been a bit more than that, I'm not really sure. But that would equate to an hourly earn, if you like, of just over £60, which is more than I make in my day job. And I think that's something that's important to consider. With any investment or side hustle, if you're making significantly less than you do through a regular job, then maybe that's not the best use of time. Obviously, certain people value their time differently, but I think that's just a general good rule of thumb to go by. Now, on to the lessons learned. I think the main one is I didn't really appreciate just how much space you need to properly invest in Lego. I just ended up surrounded by boxes in the end, and it was really impacting on my quality of life, and that's actually one of the main reasons I chose to sell my collection. So I'd recommend, if you want to get into Lego investing properly, have a dedicated room that you don't need to use for anything else, where you can just store everything. And that way it also won't get damaged if you're not using it for anything else. The other reason I sold my collection was because I needed money to buy a new flat. And that's also another important point. When you invest in anything, you want to be able to do it over the long term. If you're suddenly forced into a situation where you need to sell your investments, that's when you can potentially lose money because you might need to sell when prices aren't as favourable. Now, in terms of advice, what I'd say for people who are wanting to get into Lego investing is probably focus on buying fewer sets but larger sets. From the results I've just shown, the larger sets are the ones that made me the most money. But I think most people look to the smaller sets because they're seen as more affordable and they think there's more room for the value to grow over time. But then you're just faced with loads and loads of sets, and that's more time you've got to spend listing them, packaging them up, dropping them off and sending them away. The other piece of advice I'd give is actually to invest more in retired sets, because as more and more people get into the Lego investing hobby, I think those people are mainly focusing on sets currently stocked by Lego, so the supply of those sets are increasing more and more and the demand isn't necessarily going up with that. But with retired sets, the supply of those sets is fixed. And a lot of those are selling for a lot more than they originally sold for. So they've got a proven track record. You know the value has gone up and the demand is high and it's probably going to keep going up over time. I think most people look at an asset that has already gone up and they think it can't go up anymore. But if you look back at history, that's just false logic. And then the last piece of advice I'd give is just do your research. I think making money through Lego investing is getting harder and harder, but there is still money to be made. There are gems out there that will go up in value a lot after they retire, but you really need to know what you're buying. Just do lots and lots of research. So that about sums up this video. I hope that it's been useful. If it has, please do consider liking it and subscribing. It really helps me out. So thanks and see you in the next one.